My wife bruises easily, he explained to friends. The Fitbit data showed my heart stopped twice. The prosecutor's hands trembled slightly as she held up the printed Fitbit data, her voice carrying across the silent courtroom. This device recorded the victim's heart stopping at 11:47 p.m. and again at 11:52 p.m. The oxygen saturation dropped to levels consistent with strangulation. This is the most damning evidence I've seen in 20 years of prosecuting domestic violence cases. I sat in the witness chair, my hand unconsciously moving to my throat where the bruises had long since faded, but the memory remained vivid. My husband Marcus sat at the defense table, his expression still managing to convey that particular blend of concern and disappointment he'd perfected over our 5-year marriage. Even now, facing 25 to life, he looked like the victim. My name is Natalie Brennan, and 6 months ago, I died twice in my own bedroom while my husband's hands wrapped around my throat. The only witness was the fitness tracker I'd gotten for Christmas, the same device Marcus had mocked me for wearing to bed. She bruises if you look at her wrong, Marcus had told our friends at dinner parties, laughing while refilling wine glasses. Yesterday she walked into a door and looked like she'd been in a boxing match. Everyone would chuckle politely while I'd force a smile, adjusting my scarf or turtleneck to hide the fingerprints he'd left the night before during what he called getting carried away in bed. The prosecutor, Ms. Diana Castellanos, clicked to the next slide. A graph appeared showing my heart rate data from that night. As you can see, Mrs. Brennan's heart rate spiked to 180 beats per minute during the initial attack, then dropped precipitously to 0 for 43 seconds. I remembered the darkness creeping in from the edges of my vision, the burning in my lungs, Marcus's face above me twisted with rage because I'd questioned a credit card charge. A $3,000 charge at a jewelry store that wasn't for me. After the first revival, Ms. Castellanos continued, the victim's heart rate showed extreme tachycardia consistent with panic and oxygen deprivation. Then, 5 minutes later, we see a second strangulation event. The second time was punishment for gasping too loudly when I came back. He said I was being dramatic, trying to wake the neighbors. Objection, Marcus's lawyer, Mr. Whitman, stood smoothly. The prosecution is presenting interpretation as fact. My client maintains this was consensual, intimate activity that unfortunately went too far. Judge Patricia Hawthorne's eyes narrowed. The objection is noted but overruled. The jury will determine interpretation. Continue, Ms. Castellanos. The prosecutor clicked again. This is the sleep data from Mrs. Brennan's device. Notice the movement patterns after the events. Complete stillness for 2 hours, then sudden, erratic movement. I was unconscious, I said into the microphone, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. When I woke up, Marcus had put me in bed like nothing happened. He was sleeping beside me. I crawled to the bathroom and locked myself in. The jury, 8 women and 4 men, leaned forward. One woman had tears in her eyes. Tell us what happened next, Ms. Castellanos prompted gently. I called my sister through my watch, I explained. The same watch that recorded everything. Marcus had taken my phone months earlier, said I was too attached to it. But he didn't know the watch could make calls. I remembered huddling on the cold bathroom floor, whispering to Sarah while Marcus slept 20 feet away. She'd wanted to call 911 immediately, but I'd begged her to come get me quietly. I knew if he woke up, if the police showed up while I was still in the house, he'd kill me for real. Your Honor, Mr. Whitman interrupted, I must object to the dramatic language. Your objection is noted and overruled, Judge Hawthorne said firmly. The witness is describing her experience. Ms. Castellanos pulled up another slide. This data is from the previous 6 months. We can see 15 similar incidents of abnormal heart rate patterns and oxygen deprivation, though none as severe as the night in question. 15 times. Each one Marcus had explained away. Too much wine. Got carried away. You liked it at the time. You're so fragile, baby. The bruises he'd convinced me were my fault for having sensitive skin. The blackouts, he said, were from my low blood pressure. Mrs. Brennan, Ms. Castellanos asked, why didn't you report these earlier incidents? I looked directly at Marcus for the first time since taking the stand. His jaw was clenched, that muscle ticking the way it did before an explosion. Because he convinced me they were accidents. He'd cry afterward, bring me flowers, book spa appointments to help me heal. He'd tell our friends I was clumsy, anxious, prone to panic attacks. And they believed him because he was so charming, so concerned about his fragile wife. Marcus's mother, Patricia, sat in the gallery behind him, her face a mask of denial. She'd already given an interview calling me a gold digger, trying to destroy her successful son. Marcus was a senior partner at a prestigious law firm. I was just a freelance graphic designer who worked from home, or as he'd put it, played on the computer all day. The data also shows something else interesting. Ms. Castellanos continued, pulling up a new graph. Mrs. Brennan's resting heart rate over 6 months shows a pattern consistent with chronic stress and PTSD. Even during sleep, her heart rate never dropped to normal levels when Mr. Brennan was home. Mr. Whitman stood again. Your Honor, my client isn't on trial for being a difficult husband. This is about one unfortunate incident. One incident where his wife's heart stopped twice. Judge Hawthorne interrupted coldly. Sit down, counselor. Ms. Castellanos approached me with a tablet. Can you identify this? It was a screenshot from Marcus's phone, obtained through the search warrant. A text to his best friend, sent the morning after the attack. Natalie's being dramatic again. Says I hurt her during sex. You know how she exaggerates. Probably angling for a bigger divorce settlement. That's his message, I confirmed. Sent while I was at the hospital getting examined. The emergency room doctor had been the one to insist on calling the police. She'd seen the burst blood vessels in my eyes, the distinctive bruising pattern on my throat, the defensive wounds on my arms. She'd also been the one to tell me about the Fitbit data, explaining that it had likely saved my life by providing indisputable evidence. Let's discuss the hospital visit, Ms. Castellanos said. What happened when you arrived? Marcus followed me, I said, remembering the terror of seeing his car pull into the parking lot. He tried to come into the examination room, told the staff he was worried about his wife's mental state. Said I'd been having paranoid episodes. And what actually happened? Security removed him when he became aggressive. He grabbed my wrist, trying to pull me out of the hospital. That's when he saw I was still wearing the Fitbit. I paused, the memory making my chest tight. His face went white. He knew it recorded everything. The jury was shown security footage of Marcus being escorted out, shouting about his rights as a husband, threatening to sue the hospital for keeping him from his wife. The defense wants you to believe this was a consensual encounter gone wrong. Ms. Castellanos addressed the jury. But the evidence tells a different story. The Fitbit data combined with the medical examination shows a pattern of escalating violence over 6 months, culminating in an attack that nearly killed Mrs. Brennan. Mr. Whitman's cross-examination was brutal but predictable. Wasn't I interested in Marcus's money? No, I had my own business. Didn't I enjoy rough intimacy? Not to the point of death. Why did I stay if it was so bad? Because he'd isolated me from friends and family, convinced me I was too fragile to survive without him. You wore that device every day, Mr. Whitman pointed out. If you were truly afraid, why didn't you check the data sooner? Because I didn't know it recorded that level of detail, I answered honestly. I thought it just counted steps and basic heart rate. I didn't know it could show the moments I died. The words hung heavy in the courtroom. When Dr. Margaret Foster, the emergency physician, took the stand, her testimony was clinical but devastating. The petechial hemorrhaging in her eyes, the specific bruising pattern on her throat, the hypoxic brain injury visible on the MRI. These are consistent with sustained strangulation. The Fitbit data correlates exactly with the physical evidence. She pulled up the brain scan. Mrs. Brennan is lucky to be alive. A few more seconds either time, and she would have suffered permanent brain damage or death. Marcus's defense fell apart when his former girlfriend, Allison Ward, agreed to testify. She'd been contacted by the prosecutor after the story made the news. Her testimony was delivered via video link from London, where she'd moved to escape him. He did the same to me, she said quietly. But I didn't have proof. When I tried to report it, his law firm colleagues closed ranks. I was painted as a spurned woman trying to destroy his career. I left the country to start over. The final nail came from an unexpected source, Marcus's own Fitbit. He'd forgotten he was wearing it that night. His data showed elevated heart rate consistent with physical exertion at the exact times mine showed the strangulation events. It also showed him pacing for an hour afterward while I lay unconscious, suggesting consciousness of guilt. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Ms. Castellanos said in closing, Mr. Brennan wants you to believe his wife is fragile, dramatic gold digging. But the data doesn't lie. This device recorded the truth his words tried to hide. That Natalie Brennan survived a man who tried to kill her and make it look like an accident. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts, attempted murder, aggravated assault, domestic violence with great bodily harm. As court officers led Marcus away, he turned to look at me one last time. "No one else will ever love you," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're too damaged now." Judge Hawthorne's voice cut through the courtroom. "Mr. Brennan, you've just earned yourself an additional contempt charge. Get him out of my courtroom." 6 months later, I stood in my new apartment in a different city, watching the sunset paint the sky pink and gold. My Fitbit showed my resting heart rate, 62 beats per minute. Normal, peaceful, safe. The victim advocacy group had asked me to speak at their fundraiser. My story had helped push through legislation requiring hospitals to check smart device data in suspected abuse cases. 3 other women had already been saved by their fitness tracker data, their partners unable to explain away the electronic evidence of strangulation. My sister Sarah visited weekly, helping me rebuild the confidence Marcus had systematically destroyed. The therapy was hard, the PTSD real, but I was healing. My new Fitbit, a different brand, a different color, tracked my progress. Each day, my stress levels dropped a little more. My sleep improved. My heart rate steadied. The data that had saved my life now showed my recovery. Each metric a small victory over the man who'd tried to kill me while telling the world I bruised easily. The device buzzed with a notification. "You've reached your step goal." I smiled, remembering Marcus mocking me for wearing it to bed, calling it an obsession with meaningless numbers. Those meaningless numbers had put him in prison for 25 years. Sometimes the smallest things save us, a rhythm of heartbeats, a pattern of breaths, the silent witness wrapped around our wrist recording the truth when no one else is listening.